I've heard the Falcons are going to try to do some positionless football, a la the Warriors with positionless basketball. The Falcons are threatening or toying with the concept of doing positionless football to where you could have Bijon Robinson and Algiers out there. You can have Cordero and Bijan on the field, and it's not necessarily going to be 22 personnel. It could be 11 personnel. So based off the people that you have talked to in and around the Falcons training camp, what has been the early sense in regards to what this offense could look like with all these weapons? As you said, Desmond Ridder, he doesn't really have to be that dynamic to make this offense go. What has been the early look in Falcons camp so far from what you've heard?
Scary and dangerous and multiple.
Okay.
There's a lot of different guys that can hurt you within this offense. And you talked about it right there that you're just scrolling around Mr. Bijan Robinson. You were super high on what he can do and the Falcons drafting him. I wasn't as sold on it, but now that they've done it and you see just sort of the luxury and I get the move now after all of the offseason additions, everything that they've done. If there was sort of a different necessity there at 7 when they picked Bijan, and they hadn't made all the moves that they made this offseason, I would have said, maybe you could have used something else here or there. But they really filled all of their holes and all of their gaps during this offseason with the free agent acquisitions that at this point you were kind of drafting from a luxury position. And the fact that they did take Bijan Robinson with how the running back room is being sort of devalued all across the NFL right now, this man is more than just a running back from what I hear. He is going to be a guy like you talked about, positionless. He'll be in the backfield. He'll be, side by side with Tyler Algier, in the back, surrounding Desmond Ridder, or he could be in the slot with Patterson and Algier in the backfield, or you could have Algier or Patterson on one side, Robinson on the other, and then you have Bijan in the backfield. Like, the people that I've talked to around Falcons camp that have actually gotten an opportunity to be out there and be around the team and talk to Arthur Smith and some of the players and whatnot say that if you're wondering or you're curious about Bijan Robinson, don't be. He is the real deal. He is going to be a guy that is, going to live up to the hype of being the next sort of Marshall Faulk or LaDainian Tomlinson type runner. He is the real deal Holyfield at this point, and everybody's super excited about him. He's going to hit the field this Friday, I believe, when they play the Bengals, if my memory serves me. He'll hit the preseason field for the first time as a professional, and I know everybody here in Atlanta is super excited to see him play, and I, Sam, personally can't wait to see how Arthur Smith deploys all of these guys, because it's not just the 3 running backs. Now, that is their bread and butter. This is what's going to help Desmond Ridder a lot, because you can utilize the play action in a big way with a guy like Tyler Algier, who had 1,000 yards rushing last year, and he didn't even play the entire season. You can have Cordero Patterson, who can run the ball. He was a receiver. He's a kick returner. He can be dynamic, and maybe he can focus a little bit more on that aspect as he ages a little bit. And then you got Bijan, who can literally just do everything. Drake London on the outside, and they bring in Jonnu Smith. Kyle Pitts is back, healthy, hopefully this year, and hopefully we'll see him score more than like 2 touchdowns in a season with somebody decently competent throwing him the football. And that was really the big thing. Like, you could see the concepts were there with Arthur Smith last year. It was just Marcus Mariota couldn't deliver the football on time, where it needed to be and when it needed to be there. And you're hoping that Desmond Ridder can just do that. Again, doesn't have to be special, just can do that. And I like the fact that they brought in Taylor Heineke. I don't know if we were going to talk about that next, but he's a guy that's a veteran in case Desmond Ridder isn't truly ready for the limelight, and they might not, have a long leash on Desmond Ridder. It might be a short leash and saying, okay, if you can't execute this offense, we got a veteran guy who's been there. He's done it a little bit in Taylor Heineke, and maybe it's you go with him, or maybe you sit Desmond Ridder down for a couple of weeks and kind of let him catch his breath a little bit. Then maybe you try to go back to him. We'll see what happens, but I do believe in Desmond Ridder, and I love what this team can do. And, you're about to kind of scroll over another guy there with Mac Hollins. That was a very underrated signing that I think they had this offseason. He can come in as a big-body receiver and kind of be the number 3 behind London and Pitts in terms of wide receivers. So there's many different things the Falcons can do here, and I can't wait to see what Arthur Smith does and how he utilizes everybody, bro.
Yeah, I think, to your point, my only concern actually is Desmond Ridder. And, I felt if the Lamar thing could have happened, I know Arthur Blank was very strident against the concept of bringing in Lamar, but to me, I felt that Desmond Ridder, what he got 4 starts at the end of last year. Like, I really didn't feel like I saw enough to feel like, okay, we're going to hand this guy the keys. Now, if you would have told me, Sam, don't worry about it, we're going to overload him with so many weapons that it's not going to matter whether he's a star QB or not, then maybe I would have fell back a little bit. So maybe Arthur Blank knew something that we obviously didn't know. But to me, while I think Desmond Ridder shouldn't be, I don't think he'll be elevated to a star status, even if he plays well in this offense. Do you think he has the competency to do the throws? The main thing to me is he's not the biggest guy. He doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. Do you think with Ridder, which you mentioned, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijon, who can burn people off the line, so there could be a lot of wheel routes where he's going to be open down the sidelines deep. Can Desmond Ridder drop it in the bucket on the sidelines for those types of routes?
Well, look, I mean, dude is 6'3", 207, so like he's big in stature. He'll be able to see over that line. He'll be fine there. And I hear it's sort of a work in progress, but he is progressing, and we're going to see him play. We didn't see him play in the first preseason game. It was all Logan Woodside for the entirety of the game. But we will see, from what I'm hearing, we will see Desmond Ridder. We will see Taylor Heineke. I don't know how much we'll see of Logan Woodside. I don't really care to see any more of Logan Woodside. Mm-hmm. But I do believe that Desmond Ridder will be able to do those things. Now, again, will it be perfect? Will he hit every single throw? No, he won't hit every single throw. And there might be a little frustration from Falcon fans every once in a while if he has a bad pass to Kyle Pitts. Like early in the in training camp, you saw there was a viral video by one of my guys, Kevin Knight, who covers them for the Falcoholic. Shout out to Kevin. He does a great job. He took a video of Kyle Pitts running a route, beating his defender, and Ridder delivering the ball behind him. And then Falcons Twitter just went absolutely insane. Like, oh my gosh, here we go again. Another incompetent quarterback who can't deliver the football to our playmakers, who can clearly create separation and space. But again, it's a work in progress. That was literally the second or third practice that happened. So Falcons Twitter, I would pull a line from my guy Aaron Rodgers and say, RELAX. Relax. This guy is going to make some mistakes. I promise you he will. He's not going to be perfect. Like Sam said, he is not a star quarterback. He's a young quarterback who's going to be getting his feet wet in the National Football League with a lot of really good pieces around him. It's going to take a little bit of time for him to be as good as he's going to be in the National Football League. I don't think we'll see the best version of Desmond Ridder this year in terms of his playing career. But again, they've helped him out in a big way. Terry Fontenot and company did by bringing in all these different pieces to help him be successful, because you're taking the burden off of him. He will have to make some throws. I believe he can make those throws, and it will take a little bit of time, and there are going to be a little bit of growing pains. So again, I just want people to be sort of patient. But I'll go back to what I said earlier, Sam, of that this team and this organization and this front office must have seen something from Desmond Ridder to make it known from the very beginning, from the jump, that, hey, we're not going after another quarterback. We've got our guy. I wasn't wholeheartedly sold on Desmond Ridder coming out of the draft, but he's better than Marcus Mariota, and he's grown on me since he's been here. And you mentioned he didn't do anything special in the 4 starts, but again, I don't think he needs to do anything special. If he does what he did over those last 4 starts and progresses a little bit with the elevated playmakers around him, the Falcons are going to be just fine. And we haven't even talked about the defense yet.
Yeah, one last thing on Ridder before we slide over to that defense. I guess my only concern is that, I remember coming on your show last year and saying, look, I think the Falcons low-key could be a wild card team. And they seemingly had so many winnable games that they choked away late, especially in the second half of the year. And it just seems like I'm not sure if Ridder makes them that much better. But again, if we're just leaning on the weapons, but see, the thing about it is, and we saw this a little bit with Brock Purdy being thrust in there with the 49ers and having all these weapons, and it looks seamlessly because he's just hitting open guys. Are you confident that the schemes that can be cooked up are going to be very akin to throwing guys open, like with the 49ers last year? Like, are we going to see Drake London, who I think looked good, but did he look dominant good? No, and we could blame that on Mariota and maybe on Ridder when he came in towards the end. But are we going to see the full potential? Because there is an anti-Cal Pitts hive. I don't know why it started. I don't know why it even exists. And I'm surprised my guy Corey's not here today because he's huge anti-Cal Pitts. But there seems to be a lot of people that are kind of wait and see, even on the skill position players outside of Bijon. Everyone seems to be on board now with Bijon. But from your perspective, Arthur Smith, this offense, put Ridder to the side. Do you think these skill position players have anything to prove?
Yeah, absolutely. All the guys do, and I think that's what makes this group so dangerous, because I think everybody has something to prove. One, Bijon Robinson wants to live up to the hype of being a 7th overall draft pick. Tyler Algier, he probably feels a little bit slighted, though he'll never say it, in terms of, hey, I was a 1,000-yard rusher last year, and y'all just drafted, a running back of the 7th pick in this year's draft. And so, okay, I got to prove that I can have a role on this team. Cordero Patterson, he's getting older. Hey, you've got 2 young running backs. I got to prove that I can still have a role on this team. Drake London, hey, the last 4 games, if you go back and you look at the last 4 games that he played with Desmond Ridder, he went 7 catches, 11 targets for 70 yards. He went 7 catches, 9 targets, 96 yards, 5 catches, 8 targets, 47 yards. In the last game against the Bucs, he went 6 catches, 8 targets, $120. So he's got a real good rapport with Desmond Ridder. I love what they were able to do, because a lot of the times as young players, rookie players coming in last year, they got a chance to sort of work together a lot. They developed a good rapport. That's going to be super important now with Kyle Pitts for him to develop that type of rapport as well, because Kyle is incredibly talented. And he's a guy that, like you mentioned, there are some people out there, some truthers that are like, is Kyle Pitts really that good? Is he kind of like Julio Jones, where, yeah, he has the 1,000-yard receiver his rookie season with Matt Ryan, but couldn't get on the same page with Mariota, didn't score a lot of touchdowns.
Right.
He's got to prove that he can get into the end zone, and that's going to be on Desmond Ridder, and it's going to be a little bit on Arthur Smith, too, to cook some things up to get that man into the end zone. And then Mac Hollins, hey, was last year not a fluke? Scotty Miller, okay, like he had a couple of decent seasons in Tampa Bay. Yeah. Can he be a guy who can come in and do something from the slot for this team? Like, there are nothing but guys that have something to prove. Jonnu Smith, he was supposed to be that, dual tight end thing there in New England with Hunter Henry, and he kind of was the forgotten guy. Yeah, he hasn't been the same since he was in Tennessee. So he's now reunited with his old guy in Arthur Smith, where they were both in Tennessee. So there is nothing but guys that are looking to something to prove within this team. And we haven't even talked about the offensive line yet. To me, that unit is going to end up having they're going to be a top 5 unit this coming season. Like, no doubt about it in my mind. Yeah. Oh yeah. Chris Lindstrom is legit. I love Chris Lindstrom. Dude just got paid. The offensive line is going to vault itself as a top 5 unit this coming season.
I know they're good at running the ball. I mean, yeah, in terms of run blocking, but you think even on the pass blocking they'll improve? Because it seemed like Mariota at times was under duress.
Yeah, I do believe that they'll improve from a pass blocking perspective as well. It's just going to be different, because I really don't believe that defenses are going to be able to send as many guys as they were last year. Now, and I don't believe that teams are going to be able to get home with 4 pass rushers this coming season, because it's going to be on Desmond Ridder. And I believe what they're going to try to do with Arthur Smith is, hey, let's not get this young kid rattled. Let's just get the ball out of his hand quickly. Again, let's get it into the playmaker's hands. Now, that's not going to be the case every single time, because they are going to want to take some shots and some things like that. So you will see some sacks, and you'll see Desmond Ridder kind of having to maneuver outside the pocket. But I really want to watch and see his development and his footwork and his eyes, his vision as a quarterback of, hey, can he stand in the pocket when things are going crazy around him? Can he stand in the eye of the storm and deliver a ball where it needs to be? That, to me, makes the quarterback position the hardest position to play in all of sports, to be able to do that, where people are constantly coming at you, trying to take your head off, trying to kill you literally. maybe not literally, but figuratively, and be able to do that. I do believe Desmond Ridder will be able to do that. I believe that offensive line will take a step forward this year and will be better pass blocking because, again, they have so many more playmakers, and Desmond will be able to get the ball out of his hand. The defenses are going to have to respect that. They know they want to run the football, so yeah, I'm just very high on everything the Falcons have done this offseason. And as we've talked about, it really hinges on Desmond Ridder for their offense.
Okay. So look, I love that analysis, love the confidence in the Dirty Birds. We'll hit the chat real quick. Scrub Zero. Still can't believe the Falcons signed Mariota last season. Yeah, that was a weird thing with the whole Matt Ryan out of there, and it kind of was left holding the bag there last minute. That was rough last year.
So I don't think that was weird. I don't think that was a weird signing.
Okay.
I think that was – I mean, it made sense. Look, Arthur Smith was just looking for somebody to sort of transition away from Matt Ryan. He's like, look, I was in Tennessee with Marcus Mariota. We're comfortable with each other. If there's somebody that's going to be able to resurrect his career, I should be able to do it. If he can be resurrected at this point, we give him a shot. You mentioned it earlier. They were in a lot of games last year, and Marcus Mariota proved, hey, look, just not ready for the limelight once again, and proving to everybody that he's more of a backup quarterback than a starter. He can come in and he can run an offense fine. He wasn't horrendous last year, but he wasn't a guy that's going to take you over the top. Now, if you put him in as a quarterback for this current team, again, I'm sure they would be fine. Like, they'd probably be better than last year, but you need somebody that has the potential to be really good. And I think Desmond Ridder potentially can have that. Like, we don't know the ceiling for Desmond Ridder, but we know the ceiling for what's his name, for Desmond for Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the main thing for me was that, like, we all kind of knew Mariota was washed. We all kind of knew that he wasn't the answer. I guess from my POV, it was like, that team actually could have, not that they were going to make noise in the playoffs or anything like that, but just from the simple standpoint of, I actually think they could win some games. And that division wasn't that great last year, and they didn't have, the easiest schedule in the league. So it's like, now, you assume you give them more competent QB play. Bijan, as we're about to talk about, on paper, improved defense. Sky should be the limit where they should be the class of this division. But let's transition to this defense. Me and you spoke about it on your show, The Word with G, on ESPN Radio out there in Chattanooga, Tennessee, 95.3. And
can I say one thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so the one thing I will say when it comes to the signing to Marcus Mariota and that move and the whole thing, before we get to the defense, for me, it was sort of the perfect storm. You mentioned, like, hey, look, if they'd gotten a more competent quarterback, they could have been good enough to, potentially, get into the wild card, spot, get a wild card spot, or sneak into the playoffs, whatever it may be. But I thought it was a smart strategy on the Falcons front office part. Like, they knew they would have a lot of money going into this, past, off season. So they said, okay, we're going to get an inexpensive quarterback, a guy that the head coach is comfortable with. He's probably not going to be successful, but if he is, okay, great. That's a great story for us and fantastic. Right. Whatever. It is what it is. I think he was on like a 2-year deal. So, okay, if it works out, cool. He can kind of be the quarterback going into next year, and then we can continue to let Desmond Ridder sort of get that seasoning and that marinate on the bench and learn the NFL game and learn the NFL lifestyle. So I thought it was a really smart, savvy move because, if he doesn't end up panning out, okay, we know we don't have a Super Bowl contending team as it's currently constructed right now. So we lose a bunch of games. We're not like we're trying to lose games, but, if we don't win, we'll get a higher draft pick and we can kind of make a luxury selection, or we can make an impactful selection a little bit higher up in the draft. So I actually viewed it as a really smart strategy for the Falcons 2 off seasons ago when they had, Marcus Mariota come in and be their starting quarterback. And I think it worked out for the best.
No, for sure. I mean, it was certainly beyond time to let Matt Ryan go. So, yeah, it makes sense to pair, Mariota with his old coach. So, no, for sure. It certainly right now it looks like it was a stroke of genius, pause. But I think the defensively is where I'd like to go to next because, just yesterday we were speaking about the potential improvements of this Falcons defense. And, you were partial more towards the backfield, the back four with the guy Jesse Bates coming in on free agency. And we could talk about Okuda. To me, I'm not that sold, but on paper, it looks to be an improvement, barring injury, which he's already had some nicks and knacks already. But in regards to that D line, Grady Jarrett is no longer isolated on an island. He finally has help in the form of Calais Campbell. Walk me through how you think this defense, first of all, the defensive line has improved, and then just overall, is it going to be changed schematically with this new improved personnel, or are they going to try to run it back with the same scheme from last year?
No, it's going to be a new scheme this year because they have a new defensive coordinator. Like, I love the old school mentality of Dean Pease last year. Like, he got a lot out of that defensive unit. And there were times in which A.J. Terrell was hurt, obviously, a Pro Bowl cornerback, and then Casey Hayward, who was a former Pro Bowl cornerback. Like, those two guys weren't on the field for a good chunk of the season last year. And this defense bent but didn't break and kept this Falcons team in a lot of games, which very surprising at that point. Now, running the football a lot obviously helped chew up some of the clock, puts a little bit less of a burden on the defense. I get it. But they've got Ryan Nielsen in. They bring him over from the Saints, and obviously you can tell that he was a guy from the Saints because they brought over a couple of guys, David Onyemata from the first level of defense. And when I was down there covering the Saints, I really liked what David Onyemata brought from the nose tackle position, and you put him next to Grady Jarrett, and they're no longer going to be able to double coverage, put double teams on Grady Jarrett. And he's going to be a guy that you could see sort of skyrocket in terms of quarterback hits, quarterback pressures, and potentially sacks going into this season because you've got David Onyemata next to him. And then you look at the old man, the old hat, Calais Campbell on the outside. I still think he's got a little something left in the tank. You also got Bud Dupree. He's a little bit washed-ish. He's decent when he plays, but you can't rely on a guy like Bud Dupree. Like Tennessee Titans fans, we cover them here as well. They'll tell you, like, look, Bud Dupree was not worth what they paid him, obviously. He was fine when he was on the field, but he wasn't at all worth the money that they paid him. Now the Falcons are paying him pennies on the dollar, and he'll be a great value for them. Again, a guy that you're not going to sit there and rely on to get 12, 15 sacks in the season, but he gets 6-7 sacks. You get Calais Campbell gets 6-7 sacks. You have them teach sort of the younger guys and a Zach Harrison and an Arnold Ebiketie, a TQ, Taquan Graham, like guys like that. And I think it's going to be great not only for this defensive line, but also the linebacker spot as well. They just cut one of their starters from a year ago this week in Michael Walker, who signed with your former team, the Chicago Bears. And that's how much they think about their linebacking core in terms of Dupree, Caden Ellis, their second-round pick from last year, Troy Anderson, and then they brought back Lorenzo Carter, who was a nice addition for them at that linebacker spot as well. And then they've got some other younger guys, a D'Angelo Malone, a third-round pick from last year, a Nate Landman, who's a young guy that they're trying to incorporate there. And I think that's why they cut Michael Walker, because they're like, look, this guy, he could be a depth piece for us, but we think he's probably good enough to play on another team. So we're going to cut him after the first preseason game and try to allow him to link up somewhere else. We just don't really see a future with him. We like some of the younger guys, and we have our starters kind of locked in there. So I like what Ryan Nielsen's going to do. The problem for the Falcons has been their pressure the last couple of seasons. They can turn up the pressure a little bit, and now they've got some of the personnel to be able to do that. And Ryan Nielsen, with his scheme, they'll probably be able to do that as well. Because you look at the Saints the last couple of years, they're a team, especially with a guy like Cameron Jordan, that's been able to get after the passer in a big way.
Well, that was going to be my next question, because also with those Saints teams, they like to blitz and apply pressure. So is that something that you think that'll be carried over?
Yeah, I do wholeheartedly believe it will, and it should be, because you get pressure in the National Football League and you're able to affect the opposing quarterback. That's really how you have success on defense. So like I mentioned, Grady Jarrett's, he's going to have some help there with David Onyemata, and they're going to send some guys. They're going to get creative, whether it's A.J. Terrell coming off the side, or it's a Richie Grant who can fly in from the safety spot, or, Jeff Okudah, who you mentioned, you're not sold on. I'm not wholeheartedly sold as well. He was obviously a really high draft pick with the Lions, but
right.
You look at him as a guy who the problem for Jeff Okudah, talent's not a problem. Him staying on the field has been a problem. So if he can get on the yeah, the skill set is there, and
Yeah.
he's a guy who just hasn't had a lot of game time. So if you get him some more game time and more game reps, and he's actually able to stay healthy, I think that could have been a steal of a trade for this Falcons secondary. It was like a low risk, high reward type move for the Falcons.
Right.
If you can get the true talent out of Jeff Okudah, who again sometimes we know maybe you just need a little change of scenery. Detroit's not I haven't really spent any time in Detroit. I've been to the airport, I believe, but it's cold, it's weary. Yeah, there's not much there. I mean, I get it. It's Motown, the whole thing, but like, maybe a change of scenery, getting to, the cold, going from the cold to the hot in hot Atlanta, that really can make a difference for a guy like Jeff Okudah.
Yeah, I think, the back seven or the back four in this case, locking in on the secondary is kind of where my concerns are. Like you mentioned, I think they fortified the front line by giving Jarrett more help. So I think that was imperative, and I think they've hit home runs on paper in that. We'll see how it does in execution, but on paper they have definitely upgraded all the way around on the D line. So I'm happy there. This back four though, Jesse Bates comes in. I wouldn't say a big time free agent, but certainly a notable free agent familiar with the system. The defense last year, as we see here, in the defense did the opposite. They tightened up in the second half, but prior to that, they were giving up a lot of yards and a lot of points. So basically a tale of two halves when you're looking at the Falcons defense. From what you saw last year, was it more of a secondary issue or of a front line? It seems like you said front line earlier, but was it more of a DBs having issues thing because there's no pressure on the ball, so they're covering guys for 6-7 seconds, and we know how that is. So was it more about the back four or the front four as the Achilles heel last year for the defense?
If you're gonna make me nitpick, because honestly, I could say every level. Like,
wow,
they weren't great at any level. Like, they were just
gotcha.
Probably a little below average at every level. And I just felt so bad for Grady Jarrett. Like, dude is incredibly talented, and he had no help up front. Like,
right.
You look at the linebackers and the guys who were rushing the passer last year, and it was putrid compared to what they have now. Like, there was really nobody there. There really wasn't a lot of help. There wasn't a lot of big name players. There wasn't a lot of help there for AJ Terrell. And I already mentioned, look, they tried to bring in Casey Hayward, obviously from the Raiders, and he's kind of older at this point, and he got hurt and really didn't play a whole lot last year. And that was a big problem for this secondary. And then AJ Terrell goes out, and they got young safeties back there, and every level for this Falcons defense just, again, they just weren't that good. Like, they made do with what they had. And again, that's why I'll always look back on that 2022 season and give Dean Pease a bleep ton of credit, because he made the most he could out of that defense with a lack of skill there. But now Ryan Nielsen's got guys, he's got dudes, he's got talent, he's got names, and it's up to them. I mean, it's up to him to obviously devise a scheme and put his players in the best possible position to be successful. But it's also up to the players now to execute. Like, they've got the talent there at every level. I'm a little bit skeptical about Troy Anderson. People love him.
Mm-hmm.
I need to see a little bit more out of him, to be honest with you. I didn't think he was fantastic in coverage last year, but I do really like Caden Ellis at the linebacker spot. I watched him play a little bit with the Saints, and I like what he was able to bring to the field. I think he'll be a nice addition there. So there's just upgrades all over the place. And Jesse Bates, he has the potential to be one of the best safeties in the league. He's gotten paid now like one of the best safeties. He didn't have a fantastic year last year, according to Pro Football Focus, but he was a guy that a couple of years ago had like a 90 grade as a safety. I don't believe he'll get back to that, but he's going to be a guy that has a nice season for this Falcons secondary, and he's going to be a guy. Again, they paid him like one of the best safeties in the NFL, so he needs to come in here and be that guy in the secondary, in the backside of that defense, to kind of really ball hawk a little bit and really cover everybody's ass, because that's going to be huge for what this Falcons team wants to do on every single level of the defense. Obviously, health is wealth. They need these guys to stay healthy, but they've actually got some dudes there. And I'm excited to see what him and Richie Grant can do there as safeties. I really like Richie Grant. He's progressed nicely over his last couple of years here in the National Football League. So I'm excited to see what this team can do. And if you want to talk win totals, way over.
Way over. Okay, so the line as of this month, 8.5 on the Atlanta Falcons. So as you see, that is kind of a heavy favorite, minus 145 there. They're trying to entice people to take that under. So with, the second easiest schedule in the league, the Atlanta Falcons at 8.5. The Word with G's own Greg Larnerd is on the record saying way over. I'm going to go ahead and co-sign that and go with the over, but I don't like this number. If I could find it a little bit better price, the minus 145 is a little bit too rich for my blood. If I could find it in the 130s and the 120s maybe, I would hammer that quick, fast, in a hurry. So both of us going with the over.